Good morning and good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us for the October user group. So this month is all about modernizing your lead scoring, specifically looking at how we can take advantage of some of the new Eloqua AI functions and insights that we can gather from our instance. So let's dive in and have a look at what's on the agenda for today. So for the next 45 minutes, we'll do a little welcome. We'll just do a quick recap on Eloqua Lead Scoring 101. So just go back to some of the basics. That'll help give us context for the lead scoring component. We'll then move through to the Eloqua AI Advantage, which is a sort of a segment we're trying to drop into the user group for the next few months, just helping you do a little bit of a catch up if you're not available or not familiar with all of the functions that are available with the new Advanced Intelligence suite of products. So let's have a look at those. Then if we have time, we'll also look at 25C, which went live in August, the latest release of Eloqua, and a little bit of a sneak peek based on some roadmap information as to what we can expect and what's coming up next. For those who haven't joined us before, my name is Derek Bell. I'm your host for today, and I'm joined on the line by our CEO and founder, Adrian, who's helping manage Q&A and chat. So on that note, please keep him busy. The Q&A is available. Also, we've changed that chat function this month. It's not normally how we do it, but why not? Let's try something different. Everybody can chat. So feel free to say hello on the chat. Let us know where you are. If you have any questions, use the chat if you want to do that, or you can use the Q&A, whichever is easiest for you. So please. Okay. First question. Thank you so much from Sandra. Hi, Sandra. Welcome. Will the recording be sent out to those who cannot stay the whole time? It absolutely will, Sandra. That's not a problem. And on that note, you'll also have access to our blog. So at marketingcube.com.au/blog, you will find 10 years worth of user group replays, blog posts, and other resources. So we'd love for you to come along and have a look and participate there as well. All right, well, let's dive in and have a look at the beginning. It's always good to start at the beginning, right? So a bit of a lead scoring 101. Let's just take a step back and remember exactly what it is we're trying to do with lead scoring. So the copy that you see in front of you is actually taken directly from the Help Center. And the one thing that I'll point out to you is that there's a lot of language here that talks very much about leads in the context of the sales team, and you can probably put an overlay of marketing qualified lead. That's really what lead scoring is all about. Now, to Eloqua's credit, they invented this process, and it's been copied by pretty much every other platform that there is. But they started it, and I think they still do one of the best lead score models where we take into consideration profile as well as engagement, and then with another layer in the engagement side, really focusing on the recency component as well. It's not a basic score from 1 to 10 or 1 to 100. That's just not the reality. And so recency plays a really important part in that whole process. But lead scoring is a hallmark of the Eloqua product. It's a great tool. It's used by many, obviously, Eloqua clients, and perhaps by you as well. But what we want to try and do today is stretch your thinking a little bit in relation to how you can use lead scoring. And this will lead into then maximizing potentially some of these new AI functions that are available within Eloqua. So how else could you use lead scoring? So the first one I would suggest to you is maybe if we just lose the word lead for a moment and maybe use the term engagement scoring. It changes the meaning a little bit, right? It also then means that it doesn't just have to be something that you use in the context of a prospect. It can be something that you use in the context of customers. If you're a university, it could be prospective students and enrolled students. If you're working in a channel environment, maybe it's financial advisors. It could be right down to looking at products and individual services that you've got within your organization. So for a customer engagement score at Marketing Cube, we've had two active scores that we've had running for many years, and we've modified them and tweaked them over time on a pretty regular basis. But we very quickly realized that the score of our customers, when looked at through the lens of the lead score, didn't look so good, which didn't make any sense. But of course, then you realize that really the way you communicate and the comms that you're sending out the door to your customers can often be quite different to those to your prospects. There'll be some overlap, of course, and your lead score model can reflect that. But we found a customer engagement score was a great thing to have, and we use it in a whole range of different ways with different campaigns. And just as a general piece of information, especially for the CRM user, to see that engagement score against individuals based in individual companies and contact or accounts. The university sector, we have a number of university clients, and they find that, especially in the early stages of trying to get these prospective students on board, a number of our university clients work with domestic students, or prospective domestic students, but most of them work with international students. So they're looking to get people to come and study in the United States, or having Australian universities looking to bring them into Australia to study, etc. And so different types of lead score models are used for different audiences. We can even go so granular as to have a lead score model for a particular campaign. We have a client who works in the event space. They do large events, multi-city type scenarios, often big annual type trade shows, those sorts of things. And so they were using Eloqua to build out a lead score model for each individual event that they were running, of which there were literally hundreds. So you can be as granular as you want, or you can be as broad as you want. And you may choose to build a lead score model based on an individual product. It could be on an individual service, whatever it may be. It could be a group of products. Again, it can be as granular as you kind of need it to be. So one thing for you to be aware of when you look at the dashboards within Eloqua, so not going into insight, but looking at for instance, the lead score dashboard that you can see in front of you, this is what you're seeing is the lead score applied to every single contact in your database. So for instance, if this is a prospect lead score, in amongst all of those numbers that you can see there, those numbers represent humans and contacts. There will be customers, there will be partners, there will be a whole range of different contacts in a different range of contexts. So just be aware that the dashboard, when you look at it, is an indicator. I wouldn't take those numbers to the board and say, well, this is exactly how many leads we have, because that's really not right. What you need to do is either go into Insight and look at mimicking this type of a dashboard and then applying additional filters to it. Or you can go into your segment, and in segment, you can apply some filters and then also apply the relevant lead score model and exclude customers, exclude partners, exclude others, and just have prospects sitting there. So just a tip for you to be aware of. So first thing to understand is, where do we see this new information that's been available to us? So I thought the best place to start is the contact. So here we're looking at Adrian's contact within our instance of Marketing Cube. And you can see when I look at the contact fields there, we've got the account engagement score highlighted and the fatigue level highlighted as well. And look, honestly, and I said this to the Australian audience this morning, that his fatigue level is actually just right. I haven't photoshopped that. I haven't altered it in any way. It is just right. So that was good news from my point of view. Good to have the C-level executive support, right? That information is available and it's generated by Eloqua. You can't edit those fields. They're populated by Eloqua. But because they're contact fields, you can then put them in all sorts of different views. So when you're looking at segments and looking at the list of people in your segment, if you're looking at a shared list and looking at the people in your shared list, you can display these fields just like you would any other field. And I'd encourage you to do that, because the team really needs to see this information in front of them in order to really start to see some benefit, I suppose. And I'm already using it myself a ton in relation to audience creation and so on and so forth. All right, so combining AI data and enhancing our lead scores. How do we do that? So let's look at fatigue analysis to start with. Let's give you some context about what it is, how it works. That will then help us understand the best way to include it or not include it in our lead score model. Essentially, the fatigue analysis really looks at every single contact within the platform, and it applies a level or a fatigue level, and that is based on engagement and the individual's predicted chance of disengagement. So that's an important thing to understand. Okay, so the fatigue level is generated by Oracle. It's all managed through the AI. We can't adjust the algorithm. We can't make any changes to that. That's all in the little proprietary box that Oracle have. But you're able to see that on every single contact within your database. It's calculated using both email open engagement and the number of email messages sent to a given contact. This is the important part, in the last 180 days or 6 months. So it considers the recency and the frequency of email sends and email opens. And to a degree, if you're familiar with lead scoring, that whole recency and frequency concept is kind of a little bit about what lead scoring is doing, except that's probably more you and I playing with it. It's more of a rules-based scenario than it is an artificial intelligence scenario. Okay. So the last 180 days. What are these fatigue levels and what do they look like? So there's 9 of them that can be applied. And there's some considerations here. Now, you'll find in-depth definitions of each of these in the Eloqua Help Center. The key things to understand here relate to inactive to start with. The inactive one is flagged essentially for the last 45 days. Now, what that means is if you have a brand new contact come into your system, their immediate fatigue level will be in fact inactive. That's because they've not been sent or opened anything within the last 45 days, or not enough to really rank any further. They may then move to undersaturated. So undersaturated effectively means that you possibly have started engaging with them, but they're not opening anything at this point, or there just really isn't enough data to give them a label of just right, for example. 45 days is obviously not a long time, depending on how frequently you may communicate. There may be people in your database who only hear from you every 2 or 3 months. And then there may be other people in your database who hear from you on a weekly basis. So you can see that that 45-day criteria, which we can't change, that's just set in stone. But generally, the guidance from Oracle is that in order for you to get really robust fatigue levels assigned to contacts, there really needs to be about that 6-month period. So Eloqua, when you first turn it on, it's obviously got all of the history. So it goes back and looks at the history in order to pretty quickly assign those fatigue levels. But for new contacts, it just needs a little bit of time for it to become as accurate as possible, I suppose, is what the message is there. Then we've got the saturated and the oversaturated, and we'll expand on those here in just a moment in a little bit more detail for you. So combining them. So I was trying to think of some sort of a visual to help you understand these fatigue levels in the context of our lead score models. So let's focus on inactive, undersaturated, and just right. Just right is right there at the pinnacle. I saw the fireworks there. So I'm calling that the Goldilocks zone. Okay, so the Goldilocks zone, that's where Adrian's contact was. Okay, so you saw the fatigue level as just right. And this is just the perfect blend. What you're sending, essentially they're picking up what you're putting down, right? So they're opening, they're engaging, you're sending just right. It's just kind of working and everything's humming along beautifully. If you think about that in the context of a lead score, then that's the group of people that you would probably want to give the highest value to. Now, when it comes to undersaturated and inactive, these are not necessarily negatives, not like you're oversaturated and saturated. That's probably more of a negative. Just because someone's inactive is not a negative. So do we, in fact, either include them in the lead score at all, or do we give it a higher score? What do we do? Undersaturated is kind of that in that middle zone, where there's a bit more activity needed in order for the system to really be able to either bump them up to just right, or do they flip back to inactive, potentially based on the velocity of emails that you're sending out. Okay, so then when we come to saturated and to oversaturated, there are 3 subsets that sit within those, being low, medium, and high. Now, the other key thing to understand is that if you put your lead score model hat on again, that the fatigue level is actually added to the score as a profile data point, not as an engagement point. So if you've built lead score models before, you know that when you play with engagement, you can look at recency and frequency and you've got all those sort of controls that you can do. Versus the profile side is the person is either in Canada, or they're in the US, or they're in France, or they're in Australia, and that's it. And you just give it a score. There's no recency or frequency in relation to those. And so that's exactly how the fatigue level is viewed as well. It's a profile point. Now, I've highlighted the just right and the undersaturated because I think they're the two that we absolutely want to put in to the lead score model. The saturated and oversaturated, look, I have initially, and you'll see that here in a moment, but the inactive one, I'm just not convinced that that one is adding any value to the lead score. You can, of course, you can add anything. And we're all kind of testing the water here a little bit. We're all sort of learning as we go. Maybe we can revisit this early next year and sort of come to some conclusions in relation to the changes. That's my guidance at this particular point. So what does that look like in the lead score model when we build it out? So you'll see here, I've got just right, undersaturated, over, and saturated. Now, the key thing to point out here, notice we've got, remember there were 3 sublevels, low, medium, and high. Look, just to avoid having multiple entries in the lead score model and playing with them, I've just said basically, look, if it starts with oversaturated, I don't mind if it's low, medium, or high. Let's just give it 50% at that point. Keeping in mind that what these things actually mean is that the person is obviously not engaging with the content based on the volume that you're sending. And certainly when we get to oversaturated, it's a group that's actually showing inclination to disengage, essentially, from what you're offering and what you're doing. So why 50%? Well, you might have noticed it's right in the middle. That's really why I chose it. It's right on the fence in relation to the overall score. That's just a little bit of guidance as to one way that you could potentially look at doing it. So fatigue analysis. The next one, just some key points, I suppose, just to get your head around. So remember, the fatigue level is generated by Eloqua using the AI, and it's not something that you can modify or change. The only influence you have over it is the volume of emails that you're sending to an individual contact. The other one is to remember that the fatigue level is calculated using both email open engagement and the number of email messages sent, just to understand that, and that the evaluation period is the last 180 days, okay? With all of those different levels that you've got. It's the inactive, though. Remember, the inactive one is the 45-day criteria. Again, you'll find this micro detail in the Eloqua Help Center if you forget and want to just revisit those in a bit more detail. Okay, fatigue analysis. All right, let's have a look then at the account engagement score. Look, this one's pretty rudimentary from the way that we use it and access it. Obviously, there's a lot of smarts going on in the back end. So what we do is we have a score from a 0 to 100. What Eloqua is doing is looking at all of the contacts associated to a particular account, rounding all of those associated and linked contacts together to then arrive at an overall account engagement score. Now, just having a quick look at who's on the line with us today. Now, in relation to, for those who are in a traditional B2B play, where you probably have a CRM platform, whether it's Oracle Sales Cloud, Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, whichever it might be, each of these platforms will have an account construct, meaning that there's a company name, which is the account, and you have numerous contacts that are associated to that account. All of that relationship, those contacts to that account, is carried across into Eloqua and then appears as an account in Eloqua. And that's where the linkage is created. So the linkage of those contacts to that account comes from the CRM platform, okay? And so the score is assigned at the account level and can be used in segmentation. You can use it in lead score models like I was showing you there a moment ago. You could use it on the campaign canvas using shared filters to route people in different directions with more highly engaged accounts versus less engaged accounts. There's a whole range of plays that you've got there. The account engagement score is looking at an overall level of engagement for the accounts as a whole. And again, it's just another number. This is how you may choose to do something in the system. Now, keeping in mind, when you build out your lead score model, the end score is assigned to an individual contact. So you may have an individual contact who is highly engaged, but they may come from an account where they're only one of two or three people in that account who are actively engaged. And the other 85 contacts from that particular account are just not doing a great deal. Okay. So they may, in fact, score quite lowly. We're still looking and analyzing this ourselves, looking at our own accounts and trying to understand how, there's a little black box that we obviously are not allowed to see into, which is the Oracle and Eloqua intellectual property that arrives at this number. So we're just trying to gauge how that's kind of working. From our experience at this point, we're finding that as we look at our sort of top most engaged accounts, they all tend to be sort of around that 70 points. But then the vast majority of those highly engaged ones are sort of in the 80 and above. And then there's some at zero, not many, hopefully, but there's some at zero. And there's a few then under the 50. So it's kind of spread. It's not like everyone's super engaged or not engaged. There's certainly a spread across that. And so what we've done here is we've just kind of taken a fairly rudimentary approach to the scores, and assign some percentages based on that. Something to start with. It's just this is literally the first model that we've built. This one is active, as you can see here on the screen. It's active, and so far it's looking quite interesting. It is delivering slightly different results to our previous model. We've left both of them running active so that we can sort of see them comparatively, and just get a little bit of an idea. And as we identify individual contacts who we know are engaged, we're sort of then putting them into the model and just having a quick look and seeing exactly what's impacting that particular score. So that's how you can assign and use those two particular values of fatigue level and the overall account engagement score within your individual lead score models. All right, so lead scoring in action. How do we do that? What's some ways that we can see that actually happening? So there are a few ways that you can play with this, and I kind of mentioned there a moment ago in relation to shared filters. So shared filters are a great way because the nice thing is when you create a shared filter, you can use that shared filter either on your campaign canvas, but you can also use it over in segments. So you're not having to constantly add filters and configure them. You can just create some shared filters with standard filter criteria that you use frequently, not just lead scoring, but anything. And drop those into your segments as well. So exclusions, for example, are often just as important as your inclusions. And so if there are standard exclusions, you can either build them into your template or you could use a shared filter to do that as well. So here, what we're doing is we're looking at the ability to use a shared filter on the campaign canvas to potentially route individuals whose lead scores may have changed from the point of when they entered the campaign until maybe 3 or 4 emails down the track, say if it's a nurture campaign, for example. But these are just some ideas with how you could use that information. So you can, and Adrian actually had an interesting experience just last week with, actually it was one of our university clients. And so they had their big campus, we called it Open Day in Australia, and I've forgotten what you called it in the US, but hopefully you know what I mean. It's basically where everybody comes to university for the day to have an adventure. Maybe you can help me in the chat function with that. So the challenge was they'd sent out a whole bunch of invitations. They'd got some good responses. They just were hoping to get a few more registrations for the Open Day event, and they had a group of people to look at. And so when they looked at the group, they were like, okay, yep, I think this is it. It was a few thousand people. Should we just send everybody? And then it dawned on the group, well, like, hang on a minute, why don't we use the fatigue analysis? So what they did is they applied the fatigue analysis to that segment and said, anybody that is in the sort of saturated or oversaturated area, let's exclude them. They've already received 3 invitations. So it's not like they're missing out necessarily, but they're clearly a little oversaturated. So what they did is that audience then shrunk a little bit, but now it was just looking at those people who I think were either just right, undersaturated, or inactive. There probably wouldn't have been many inactive in there based on what I understand. But anyway, so that was just one example of where the fatigue analysis can just give you that little bit of a leg up, right? It's just another tool that you've got available to you. And if you're dealing with large groups like that, where you've got thousands, tens of thousands, or maybe even hundreds of thousands of people in some audiences, instead of just sort of carte blanche sending the email to everybody because, well, that's what we've always done, maybe start looking at fatigue analysis as one way to just maybe pull back a little bit, and not inundate people with information. The other one to look at is adjusting the velocity of a contact in a campaign if their lead score increases. And that's where that shared filter I just showed you could come in quite handy. So if you've got a nurture campaign, whether it's onboarding or a traditional lead nurture campaign, then you might have 5, 6, 10, 15 emails spread over a 6 or 12 month period. However, if somebody is coming through that campaign, and if you're constantly evaluating what their lead score is before you send the next email, if that lead score is meeting a certain threshold, then maybe you speed up the process. So they don't wait 3 weeks for the next email. Maybe they wait a week for the next email. Okay, things like that. So really handy from the point of view of just sort of tailoring a little bit better to the audience. If they're engaging with you and they're clicking and they're downloading and they're opening things, well, let's maybe pick up the pace a little bit in relation to what we're doing. And of course, fold in your fatigue analysis in there as well, and evaluate that at the same time. Now, you could also produce a really highly tailored lead score model. And this goes back a little bit to where I talked about trying to stretch your thinking in relation to how you might use lead scoring within the organization. A really highly tailored model can be really helpful for a whole range of things. If you have a brand new product that's launching, you may have a very narrow focused lead score model that looks just at the assets, the campaigns, all of the bits and pieces you have in play, the page tagging, all of those things that relate just to that particular product. And so that could be really quite interesting for the sales team as they're looking to target different accounts and different individuals. That particular lead score would be highly relevant in that particular scenario. And then, of course, from an ABM point of view, so if we're looking at account-based marketing teams within your organization, then certainly looking at using the account engagement score and making sure it's visible to the ABM team is also a really good thing to do. It just gives them another level of insight that they just did not have previously. Okay, so I just wanted to show you some of those on the canvas so you can see exactly what that looks like. The first one was when we look at the fatigue level, if we're using, say, compare contact fields, you can search for fatigue analysis or fatigue level. There it is. And you'll see here, so there's those 9 variables that we talked about. Now you can see once you sort of get into the oversaturated area, there are in fact 3 options. And what you've got here is a single select pick list. What I've done is instead of using the compare contact field area, what I've done is I've created some shared filters. So fatigue level. So I've created these. So fatigue equals inactive. So it's a 1-to-1, 1-to-1, versus the oversaturated and saturated. I've built into into the shared filter, all 3 levels. So when you open up that particular shared filter, it'll say oversaturated, low, or high, or low, medium, or high. So instead of having to do 3 steps with compare contact fields, I just throw in 1 shared filter. So a lot easier to play with. Now, the other one that we've got to play with is the lead score. And so here's that lead score model. And so, for instance, what I can do here is, maybe I send out this particular email. We pretend that this is email number 6 in a traditional lead score model. Let me grab a weight element. So you would probably do something like this, add that through like that. You may wait 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It doesn't really matter, whatever that time frame may be. But in that particular time, the lead score model will have refreshed many, many times and take into consideration the behavior of that person and that individual with emails, with landing pages, with forms, website visits, etc. So now we can ask the question, did the person, has their lead score reached an A1, A2, B1, B2 type scenario? And if it has, well, let's head off in a different direction. Let's go straight to another email potentially. Or if it hasn't changed, maybe we remain sort of in a wait step and maybe we add another week to that. So so something like that. And then they eventually will progress on like so and moving through. So all we're doing is we're trying to modify the journey based on the observed behavior. And that's really what a lead score model is all about at the end of the day, is taking that digital behavior and being able to get some insight from it and hopefully learn something and change the experience that we're delivering to people. So the next thing I wanted to show you, this is looking at our the Advanced Intelligence Suite. And so this is a little section we just wanted to focus on these sort of 5 areas within Eloqua over the next 5 months. We did one last month, so a few more months to go, and just expand on these in a little bit more detail. So this month was account intelligence. I figured it made sense given the conversation we've just had. So some of these points I've shared with you already, but just wanted to expand on a couple of them here for you. So from the dashboard area within Eloqua, we can access the account engagement overview. And so what do I see there? Well, I see a range of things. I see top engaged accounts. I see an activity timeline by account. So I can search by individual account name, or I can see a roll-up. And so I see top accounts by engagement score. And you'll also see the number of contacts that are engaged within that account. There's a number there to show you. Shows you, I think, the whole number of contacts in that account, and then the number of engaged contacts within that account. So you see it as 2 separate figures. And then the account engagement score is obviously listed there as well. So what does that look like? So it looks like this. So you'll see the engagement score here, then changes in the last week. So the score is refreshed on a regular basis. And then you'll see the activity or the number of activities that were scored. And here you've got the engaged contacts versus the reachable contacts. We can see here there's 7 people and 1 or 2 have been engaged, etc. Now, these are all fake accounts, by the way, if you're wondering what on earth's going on there. But yeah, these are all fake accounts. But the scores, that's exactly how it looks. And so you see if there's been an increase or a decrease, number of activities, and so on and so forth. Okay, so just some tips to reinforce a little bit of what we said earlier. Let's make sure we get that account engagement score displayed in your various contact views. So if you're an administrator on the line today, have a think about going through your different contact views and your account views, and let's make sure we expose the account intelligence as well as the fatigue analysis level or fatigue level into those contact views as well. Obviously, lead score models, that's the key thing we talked about today. Let's look at getting that into the lead score model, adding it as another variable, and then using it, as I said before, to look at adjusting the contact or a journey on a multi-step campaign. So again, a shared filter is probably the easiest way to do it versus just using the filters on the canvas or the elements. Just with the shared filter, you can be a little bit more granular and create those models like you saw I did with the fatigue levels, for instance. So just get the team using them, I think, is the key thing. Get them to see that information in front of them, and they'll start to understand how they can potentially gain more from it. So 25C, the update took place in August. Multi-language selection. So we're seeing, I think it's Italian, French, kind of the Latin languages have been expanded, which is good. There's more coming as well, we understand. So if you have business within the Asian environment, we understand some of the Asian languages are on the roadmap, and that's happening as well. And apparently happening a bit faster than was being expected. So that's even better news. If you're using the send time optimization, if you're using the guided campaigns, send time optimization is now also available there for you. The Redwood updates included signature layout editors, thumbnails for images. I'm not sure if you've seen that, but it's kind of a nicer way to access your images. The contact fold out, I'll show you that one because it's a little bit too hard to explain otherwise. Good updates to Oracle Sales Tools. There was more of a technical update in relation to the Chrome browser extension. Just keeping that up to date. The SMS usage report, if you're using the Oracle Eloqua SMS application. So usage reports are now available. A new stuck records report, and also Zoom app for Eloqua's Salesforce app and the Oracle Sales app all have enhancements. So, and we're looking forward to some more with the Zoom app as well. So at the moment, the Oracle Zoom app doesn't allow you to integrate with Zoom events, but apparently that's on the roadmap, and we should hopefully see that early next year, which will be kind of nice. Which then brings it kind of into par with the actual Zoom app from Zoom, if you're a Zoom client. Okay. So this is just a refresh or the current view of the Oracle Eloqua product from Oracle's point of view. If you've been using Oracle for a while or Eloqua for a while, you've seen these sort of images morph over the years, and it just kind of keeps growing, which is kind of nice. So that's just really more of an FYI. In relation to roadmap highlights, there are kind of 4 key areas that Oracle seems to be focusing on. The generative AI piece, and there is certainly more coming. What's available today, really it's release 1.0. Okay, and you've been around long enough. We all know that release 1.0 is good, but we can't wait for 2.0. Okay, that's coming. I've got a little bit more here to share with you on that one in just a minute. Redwood, continued expansion of the Redwood interface throughout the application. We've been going through that for a couple of years now, and I think we'll probably be there for at least another 12 months before they get through the entire application. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. I think it's a fresh take. It's helping, and I think it's good. I like it. The unified orchestration is really looking at that multi-channel campaign concept and really unifying that for you and trying to bring it together and make it as tight as possible. That whole conversion ready opportunity concept that we have with the guided campaigns, for example, all of that forms part of the unified orchestration. The other one that's really quite exciting is looking externally now to additional suite integrations. So really beefing up things in relation to social ads, event and sales integrations, all those sort of things. There's more coming for Salesforce, the Oracle CX Sales application, as well as Microsoft Dynamics, which is great. For those of you that have been following more around agentic type of concepts and what they are, or agentic AI, this is really just an FYI. And then you see here in the bottom left-hand corner, they refer to this as an abridged list. And I think that's probably a great way to do it, because it'll get crazy to try and list all of them. We're exploring these and looking at these and trying to understand how we can better use them and try and get the clients along for that journey, etc. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. There are all sorts of different things happening on the screen, but we'd love to chat with you further about those. This was sort of a little bit of a highlight from the product update from, this month? No, it's October now, isn't it? So in September, this is kind of the future of generative AI. So for those of you that are running it today, you'll know it's kind of cool. You can give it a brief and apply a tone, like is it a professional or a casual type of tone? But what you can't do is give it your brand flavor and your brand guidelines, okay? That's coming, okay? So think of that as down the track, 2.0, hopefully. The other one is around content intelligence. So rewriting, shortening, lengthening, and summarization of content will also be, I think, quite helpful. Tagging and recommendations, trying to understand exactly what that means and how that will roll out. But I think that also rolls over to images as well, and being able to tag images with certain keywords, for instance, those sorts of things. So yeah, more coming in relation to the generative AI piece, certainly visual summaries and dashboards highlighting key insights. That one's going to be interesting. So you can see a little bit of a terrible graphic there, but that's what we're looking for. So that's cool. Redwood changes, form designer and the processing areas. So this is what you will see eventually. There's no timeline here. You can see this roadmap up in the top left-hand corner. But this is what we can expect probably next year, I imagine, at some point, which will be nice. And the big one, I was saying to Adrian earlier today, I think this is I still can't quite remember. I think it's either my 3rd or my 4th version of the campaign canvas. I'll warm to it. I'm not totally cozy with it right now, but I'll warm to it. But that's probably just my, anyway, I won't go into other details. It's much the same, right? It's that visual representation. That's the key thing. And that's the great advantage I like about the campaign canvas, is that it is a visual representation that makes it so much easier to understand the flow of things as it goes through the process. So it really kind of freshens it up a little bit, which is kind of nice. So yeah, we'll see. I'm not sure how far away that is, whether that's going to be 12 months or more, or maybe less. I'm not sure, but things are coming and changing. Okay. I wanted to emphasize next month. Now, the world is moving into summertime and out of summertime, etc., and it gets very difficult down here in our part of the world to accommodate continental Europe and the Americas at the same time. It's kind of like we have to hedge our bets here a little bit. So the Americas wins in this scenario for daylight business hours. And our friends across EMEA for essentially November, December will be sort of early evening. So maybe it's a nice little Chardonnay or a Pinot Noir, sitting down and watching Derek all the way live from Sydney, Australia, while you enjoy your evening. But just a coffee for our friends in the Americas, all right? No Pinot Noirs at work, please. And but we do get a better spread across east to west coast from Toronto right across to Vancouver, New York to San Francisco, and so on and so forth. So just keep that in mind. You'll see that information. We'll get it out to you so it's there. I notice there's been a little bit of action in the webinar chat here, Adrian. Just a question, I think it was. What did we say there? It'd be nice if we could detract score for saturated and oversaturated. Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. Look, I'll try and expand on some of that in the blog post, because I think we'll be having debates on these things for a little while, and everyone's going to have different experiences, and we'll roll them out. But Lee, thank you for that. I'll take that as a statement. All right, it's not a question; it's a statement. So I'll take that as a statement, and but I think I'll work that into the user group blog post as well. So thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you do have any questions, happy to hang on the line here for a little bit. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next month, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you very much.